Hello and welcome to this interview series ahead of DevOps Live, taking place on the 12th and 13th of March at Excel London. I'm Rebecca Uffindell, editor at Techarati, and today my guest is Jason Morris, head of DevOps at Citi. Jason will be making an appearance at DevOps Live, but today we will be discussing 3 innovations or inventions that have had an effect on their life. So welcome to this interview series, Jason, and what is your first invention and why have you selected it?
Hi, thank you for having me. So my first invention, and when you asked to name 3 things, the first one that came straight to my head was Excel. Microsoft Excel. I know it wasn't the first spreadsheet on the market, but if I were looking for a piece of technology which is just completely omnipotent, right? It's everywhere. I use it every single day. Everybody I know uses it every single day. So yeah, Microsoft Excel for me is just probably the single most successful piece of software and one of the most useful software tools of all time.
I think that's a great choice. I don't think we've actually had this one before in this series. But as you said, it's one of those technologies which has kind of penetrated everyone's day-to-day life. So that's a really fantastic choice. And so for you, how has Excel influenced your approach to problem solving and automation in DevOps, if at all?
I guess in the DevOps space, I just use it for data, for analyzing data. Our systems spit out inordinate amounts of data on all sorts of topics, and I am regularly asked at incredibly short notice to produce reports or numbers on various things. And there just is nothing better if I just grab a data set, throw it into the sheet, and then just wrangle it into whatever form you need it to be. Again, it's one of those things that is like the telephone. You almost forget that it exists, but just how much you use it. So obviously we don't really use it in the DevOps CI/CD pipelines, of course, right? But in terms of just managing the environment and, like I said, just basically being able to wrangle data sets, there's just nothing better.
And so I've kind of seen you have, when it comes to Excel, all these competitions and tournaments that kind of go on and how creative people are when it comes to using Excel. I have a question for you, which is what is the most impressive or creative use of Excel that you've seen or experienced?
Well, to be honest, I'm certainly not involved in any competitions or anything like that. But what I would say is that, I work in investment banking, have done for 25 years, and, you just wander around anywhere. We'll wander around our trade floor. Every single trader has spreadsheets up on their screen. They're just they're constantly checking things, ideas. They've got modeling things and what have you. And they use Excel as their sort of knife and fork. It's just the Swiss Army knife. It's probably a better analogy, right? Of just the thing that they can use. If you go around our research analysts, they're all over it. If you go around anybody practically in our IT department, again, certainly anybody who's reached level where they're constantly asked to give updates and reports and data sets, everybody is using it. So, probably the most impressive thing I have seen, I couldn't go into it in great detail, but as I said, let's just say, wandering around a trade floor, I've seen some pretty elaborate uses of Excel for some pretty amazing purposes. It's not appropriate for everything. And generally those things which someone works up on an Excel spreadsheet end up in a real system later on. But just the fact that we can put that power in the hands of our users and they can create and validate their ideas like that, it's just amazing.
I definitely agree. And do you think tools like Excel have influenced how people approach data analysis and decision making?
Well, I think for all the reasons that I've just said, I think that's just a given. Yeah, again, it's not always in a big, wow, eureka moment. Just in day to day. Again, it has fundamentally changed the way that people work with numbers in every walk of life. And, everything from somebody doing their home budgeting to somebody working out a budget for a big corporation to somebody working out a new trading strategy to, I don't even know what. So, yeah, absolutely. Fundamentally, they changed the world. No question about it.
Right. And so for your second invention, what have you chosen for us?
Well, actually, so the first thing that I thought of was the iPhone, but I'm going to drop that one. Amazing thing. I remember seeing the keynote speech from Steve Jobs and my jaw was on the floor. Just complete game changer. But that's a sort of very complicated tech revolution. My second choice is a far more simple yet brilliantly elegant and phenomenally impactful invention, which is JUnit, the very tiny framework that millions of people use to test their software in a way that they often didn't before it appeared. And so, yeah, so JUnit is my second choice.
And so JUnit has become a fundamental tool for developers, largely because it's open source and widely accessible. How do you think its open source nature has contributed to its success and adoption?
Oh, again, I think that was really key to its success. There were lots of other test automation tools around at the time, still are. They're working quite different ways, but generally they were you go to buy it, quite expensive. They could do some pretty clever stuff, but they were not cheap and generally not used by developers. They, would be definitely the kind of thing that the QA teams would have in their toolkit, but developers themselves, not so much. And then I think with the advent of, or just the idea of unit testing, and then I say JUnit just appeared, and it was just, again, just free to everybody. Just so that I can't overstate how important that is in terms of just accessibility, and then just things like that spread like wildfire because there's no sign up, there's no decision to make. It was just open source and off you go. Again, people trust it because it's open source. People have been able to contribute to it because it's open source, and so the JUnit we see today is fundamentally the same thing, but it's just been refined in 100 very sort of small ways, which just make it that much better. I'm not sure that would have happened had it been a commercial tool. Yeah, and I think for something again, which is very just actually generally quite simple, it's probably quite hard to sell that anyway. Much better to have it, just out there in the wild.
I think you're completely right with that. Having that open source nature and again, no decision, no sign up, I think is a massive contributor to that. And so looking back, what was your first experience with automated testing and how did JUnit change the way you approach development?
So, well, funny enough, I had used some of those other tools before, and again, I found them very useful. But I think just that whole developer-centric unit testing idea, and then with the tool, it completely changed it. I remember the first we'd used it in pockets and on a couple of little projects, and then there was one which was purely my own project, right, greenfield from the ground up, and so I decided that. Right, we're going to do this properly. I'm going to write unit tests for this from start to finish. I'm going to measure the code coverage. I'm going to just make sure that stays high. And I would say that was a eureka moment for me. Just the ability to be able to write some code and test it in seconds, right in my IDE. Didn't have to spin up another tool. Didn't have to wait for it to do lots of clever logins and all these kind of stuff. Just bang, seconds. Okay, still green, keep going. Red, go fix it. It was just that simple. But yeah, that was a total eureka moment for me. And the people who took on that project after me again came and said, this is so great because I just know, or I'm confident that when I make a change, you're there looking over my shoulder checking it. And so that, again, has a profound effect when you're talking about software development teams, of which most people actually spend their lives. I think the lone developer is not such a common thing. Generally you're working in a team. So having that kind of thing as a collaboration tool, communication tool is actually very, very powerful.
If JUnit didn't exist, what do you think your testing process would look like today? Is there another invention or methodology you think would have filled that gap?
It's just a really good question. I mean, I don't know. I doubt it would have been the same. So nothing's ever the same. Would we still be using those other tools that I talked about, the sort of more heavyweight, big industrial type things? Probably. Well, as I said, we do still use those anyway. But I genuinely don't know what the difference would be. I don't know if someone else would have just stepped in and just said, well, look, it's not just JUnit, it's the concept of unit testing. Here's a slightly different way to do it. Or whether that whole idea just wouldn't have surfaced. But I genuinely don't. What I do know is I couldn't have done it. I could not have done it better. So, so I've never spared a minute thinking about how to do it better because it just works.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And so for your last invention, I understand it's one a little bit out of the box, but I'm excited to ask you about this.
Yeah, okay. So my third one is nothing to do with technology or development or anything at all. It's heated motorcycle gloves. Um, so I'm a long time motorcyclist I mean, I've been riding motorbikes since I was 16, which was a long time ago. And, I've done all sorts of trips and what have you on motorbikes, but actually I just use it as my day-to-day transport. I live in London. Anyone who's ever been in London will know that driving anywhere, especially if you're commuting, is just horrible and takes hours. The public transport's amazing, but very cramped. Anyone who's ever been on the Northern Line in rush hour, I don't know if you've ever seen those videos of those sort of platform attendants in Tokyo who are literally shoving people into. Well, this is the self-service version of that, right? There's no one shoving you in; people just do it for themselves. So I opt to use my motorcycle as my sort of commuter and primary transport, which is great. But in the winter, London gets pretty cold. And again, anyone who rides a motorcycle a lot will know that one of the hardest things to do is to keep your hands warm. Body, lots of layers. Actually, that's all fine. But your extremities, they're out there in the wind. They just get cold. And I had tried all sorts of things. I tried super thick gloves, which you couldn't hold the handlebars or work the controls. I've tried other things. None of them really worked. And one day I was at a show. Actually, it was the motorcycle show at Excel. And I saw somebody selling these heated gloves. They're very simple. You run a cable down your sleeves, down to the battery, plug them into the gloves. Absolutely changed my life. Completely changed my life. So, now, well, basically for 2 months of the year, my commute used to be tough. I had to just grin and bear it. Maybe I'd be warming my hands over the engine whenever I stopped at traffic lights. Actually, about 5 years ago, I switched to an electric motorcycle, so I don't even have that anymore because it doesn't generate heat like that. But this simple thing, a pair of gloves with heating elements all the way down the fingers and in the palms, plugs into your battery, just completely transformed that. Now, my hands are fine. Everything's fine. It's safer. It's more comfortable. Again, another brilliantly simple and elegant technology solution to a real world problem. I love it.
So super like elegant, but also it kind of begs to the question of why has this not been done before? This is such like an invention that's made such a big impact on your day to day.
Good question. I guess they probably have been around for longer than I realised, and they seemed a bit expensive. But I guess if you think about it, actually just making it, you've got to stitch a heating element into all 5 fingers. You've got to make sure this thing's got to work in all weather conditions. So it's got to not suddenly electrocute you if it rains. You've got, I imagine there are quite a number of challenges around doing that. I think people tried the more low-tech ideas before, and then this one, honestly, if there are any bikers out there, if you ride in the winter, just get heated gloves. It will change your life.
And so now you have these heated gloves. Have you gone on any other journeys that have basically been aided by this? Not so much to do with your normal commute, but have you gone to any like colder climates and this has made a big effect on you?
Well, I'm not planning any Arctic expeditions. Let's put it that way. No, not really. It means that I could travel a bit further if I need to, but no, it's less. I guess it's less about enabling me to do different journeys, but it is very much just about making the existing one. It was the missing, it was that missing piece of the puzzle to make it just work. So and again, if it's something like commuting, you want it to just work, right? You don't want to have to think about it. You don't want to be grinning and bearing it. You just want to get on, do it, get there, and get to the other end. So it's very much more about that.
No, for sure. And you said you've been riding since you were 16. Do you have a memorable experience or the most memorable experience of you riding?
I've done quite a few big trips. I've been lucky. I did a few stints living overseas. So I lived in the US. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, for a couple of years, and was able to do a trip there, right from Atlanta all the way up the coast, up through New York, New Hampshire, up into Canada, and all the way back again. It's about a 3,000 mile round trip. I also spent some time living in Australia, and I was able to do. Look, everybody goes to Australia, does the standard trip from Sydney to Cairns, so sort of down from the south east up to the northeast to where the Great Barrier Reef is. Um, did that by motorbike as well. But actually, the most memorable one was when I was in Cairns. I found a small company who ran week-long excursions up to a place called Cape York. Now, most people have never even heard of Cape York, especially if you don't live in Australia. But it's the pointy bit up in the very northeast, above Cairns and above the Barrier Reef. And it's about 1,500 kilometers, and it's pretty much all off-road. This sounded great, and I signed up and went and did it. A friend joined me for the trip. There was a group of about 10 of us in total, plus the guides. And Cape York Motorcycle Adventures, amazing company. I hope they still exist. This was a long time ago. Oh, I mean, I saw amazing things. Practically untouched bushland. Nothing's completely untouched these days, but really, yeah, remote places that I would never have seen otherwise, and got to do it all on a dirt bike. And it was tough going. It was physically hard, but it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
That sounds incredible. Do you have anything else that's on your list that you would like to do similar to that in the future?
Yes, although I think I'm probably a bit less ambitious these days. So, I mean, look, my eldest is 15 years old. I haven't done a motorbike trip like that at all since he was born. So, right now, anywhere would be good. I would love to go and do a bit of a trip around Europe. I'd love to go around Eastern Europe. I'm not sure now's the best time to do that, but most of it I think would be perfectly okay. It looks fantastic. Probably the dream would be Japan.
Mm.
I really, really fascinated by Japan. I've never been. There's a strong motorcycle culture there. I mean, a good chunk of the motorbikes we ride today come from Japan. So yeah, I think that would probably be that's the bucket list one.
Great. And so I have another question related to this, and then we'll talk about your session a little bit. But is there an invention that you would hope would be invented for your motorcycle that has not yet been invented?
Yes, there is. So I think I said that the heated gloves was the last piece of the puzzle. That is not true. It means I can ride in all temperatures now. The one thing that is still not a fun experience is riding in the rain. And I can keep dry. We've got amazing clothing these days. That's not a problem. The problem is clearing your visor. Yeah, no one has come up with. I've seen people have tried and nobody's succeeded, but no one has come up with the equivalent of the windscreen wiper to clear your visor. And again, as somebody who wears glasses, he would otherwise. Oh well, I might flip the visor up and just get wet. But of course, then I just get my glasses covered, and there's no windscreen wipers for my glasses either. So yeah, that one. Again, if anybody can nail that, come call me. I'm your first angel investor.
Hey, that's fantastic. Well, maybe they'll come along to your session, and then they can you can have a little bit of a conversation about
Great.
that. See what the process would be like for that. And then now looking to next month, where you will be at DevOps Live, what can attendees expect to learn from your session at the event?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess a lot of people probably won't know that much about Citi because it's not really a sort of high street bank here in the UK. It is in other countries. What I can tell you is that it's huge, and our DevOps is equally huge. Just to give people a taste of that. So I run the primary CI/CD platform for all of Citigroup. We have, depends how you count, 30 to 40,000 developers. They're in all kinds of countries, time zones, what have you. We have around 3,000 applications. Again, some of those very, very big applications. We have, at the last count, we have about 90,000 pipelines registered and hosted. About 30,000 of those are active every day. Sorry, not every day, but about 30,000 of those are active per month. So if you want to know how do we manage big CI/CD, then come along. I'll be talking about that. That's really the focus of the talk, and it's at I think it's at 10:20 on the 13th. So please come on down and find out how we. Well, our slogan is "Get your pipelines for nothing, and your weekends free. So if you want to know how to do that, come see me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Jason. I'm sure everyone will be looking forward to seeing you at DevOps Live next month.